Welcome everyone to Digital Sofa. I have with me today Mikko Hypponen. Probably pronounced it wrong, but...
Probably wrong, yes. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Thank you.
As you might know, I'm the Chief Solutions Officer at Upheads, and one of my extra hats is the Security Manager. And Mikko, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I'm a Finn. I live in Helsinki. I've been working all my life with computers. I published my first commercial programs in the 1980s on 8-bit home computers. And since 1991, I've been working at the same Finnish company, originally known as Data Fellows, which then renamed itself to F-Secure, and during this year split into two different companies, F-Secure and WithSecure. And I'm on the WithSecure side, which is the enterprise security business-to-business side of the company. We produce software solutions and consulting for companies around the world, 1,300 people working in 25 countries around the world.
Impressive. Has security always been your field? Or did you start off with just programming?
Yeah, well, originally when I was writing my first programs on these powerless machines, I taught myself assembly. So I was writing as low-level programs as you could to get some power out of the weak machines. And that then pretty directly led to the fact that I had some skills to do reverse engineering. That this means when early viruses started appearing in the early 1990s, someone had to decode them. And since I knew assembler, my boss, Risto Siilasmaa, who is still our chairman today and who was the chairman of Nokia for many years, he told me that, Mikko, since you know assembler, why don't you try decoding some of these viruses? And that's what I started doing, and that's what led me to this career. I've spent all my life analyzing malware, decoding attacks, and hunting hackers.
Very good. At the current state of the world, we are seeing a lot of attacks, but as far as I've noticed, I haven't seen those many new attack vectors. Are there new ones on the rise? Are we seeing other or different attack methods?
Well, it's getting harder and harder for attackers to find vulnerabilities. If you look at where we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and where we are today, we're clearly getting much, much better. 10 years ago, we were still finding problems with Flash and Java plugins in our browsers. And there were tons of drive-by exploits where Windows computers got hacked simply by visiting a website. That's no longer a thing. The browser security has become so much better. The built-in security of operating systems have become so much better. And the fact that we are more and more using these limited devices, especially mobile phones and tablets, which run operating systems which are so much more constrained, so that malware exploits are much, much harder to do. The end result of all of this is that we are seeing more and more of the attacks going through the easier route, which is through humans. So tricking users to do things they're not supposed to do. That seems to be the way future that the attackers are exploiting right now.
Yeah, we've seen that as well. And as we secure more and more, like secure emails and so forth, the attackers move on to social media and SMSs and so forth.
And there's no patch for humans. Like if there's a security vulnerability, we'll just find it, we'll fix it, we'll patch everything. We can't patch brains. The only patch we have is education, and education almost always fails.
Yeah, that's right. And I've heard you talk before, and you've spoken a lot about success stories. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, one term I've used to explain why it seems that we're failing when we're actually getting better and better is the term cybersecurity Tetris. Because in the game of Tetris, the rules are very simple. You're trying to make a whole line. And what happens when you succeed, when you make a whole line, the line disappears. So in the game of Tetris, your successes disappear, but your failures pile up. Yeah. And that's what we're doing in security as well. When we succeed in defending our systems, that only means that nothing happened. It's completely invisible. When we fail, when the attackers get in, when there's a data leak, when there's a data breach, that's very visible. So we only see the failures. And that brings us this false impression that security is getting worse and worse when it actually is getting better and better. We're just not seeing the success stories. We're not celebrating the success stories. And rarely is anyone thanked for stopping a disaster which didn't happen.
Yeah, that is so correct. And we are actually, I've been telling our customers that we actually see a decline in the number of successful attacks on our customers as they progress and using your WithSecure programs and so forth.
Yeah, and it's quite obvious to see that the newspapers will never have a headline about a big company which did not get hacked. Like, that's not news. When a company doesn't get hacked, when they are able to protect themselves and prevent attacks, that's invisible.
Yeah, exactly. So for this world we live in and Russia especially, do you see this having an impact on Norwegian or European businesses, small businesses? As we are representing small businesses in Norway, of course, and maybe Nordic after a while. Will these attacks have an impact on our customers?
Yes. However, the most likely attacks which have a direct effect on, let's say, Nordic and Baltic companies, especially small and medium-sized companies, are not the attacks coming from the Russian government. They're the attacks coming from Russian civilians. Yeah. The attacks that we've seen since February 24th online, we can put the attackers into three different groups. We have the governmental attacks from the Russian government, from the Russian intelligence agencies, from the Russian military. Those have been mostly targeting Ukraine itself, and most of those happened in early spring. Then group number two, Russian organized crime gangs. There are several existing crime gangs which align themselves with the Russian government, which basically means they're targeting more of the energy creation and energy distribution companies with attacks like ransomware. They're still trying to make money, but they're just targeting the kinds of victims which would also benefit Russia in this conflict. And in this conflict, energy, Russian oil, coal and gas are weapons which they're using to fight the war. And then we have the third group, and this is the one relevant to small and medium-sized companies. That's Russian hacktivists or Russian patriotic hackers. There's plenty of groups which appeared from out of nowhere in the end of February. Groups like Killnet or Hacksnet or No Name 57. These are not part of the Russian government. They are not trying to make money. They are independent groups which organize themselves in chat systems on Tor Hidden Service and on Telegram, and they target typically with denial of service attacks, but sometimes also with break-ins into the kind of targets they think would help Russia in this cause. So they are volunteers who want to be part of the conflict to support their motherland. And they might have some kind of targeting information given to them by the Russian government, but even that is unsure. They might be completely independent. And the targets of theirs are very typically like companies and enterprises across the Baltics and Nordics and elsewhere in Europe, the kind of targets that they feel would matter either directly or indirectly. So it might be a concrete attack on critical systems, or it might be an attack on mines. So for example, in Finland, we had one of these groups attacked the website of the defense ministry. Yeah. Just when President Zelensky was giving a speech to our House of Parliament over a stream, the defense ministry website goes down. As soon as the website goes down, my phone starts ringing. It's my contact with the government, but it's also the journalists. Tons of journalists called me. Oh my God, Mikko, the website of the defense ministry was attacked during Zelensky's speech. What should we do now? And the question I always asked them was, okay, when was the last time you visited the website of the defense ministry? And the answer is that, never, or maybe a year ago. It's not critical infrastructure. The website is a website. It has nothing to do with our defense. It's like a bulletin board. It's like a, notice board. If it goes down, who cares? But it feels bad.
Yeah.
That's why it's an attack to our minds, not really attack against critical infrastructure.
No, the scarcity, of course.
There you go.
Yeah. We have, like before the summer, when the Russian, we do actually have some customers supporting critical infrastructure in Norway, and those were, of course, attacked with denial of services. So that's correct. So, but still, it's the same vectors as before.
Most of the attacks with denial of service or with online traffic jams, as I often describe them, it's interesting that the botnets have changed. 5 years ago, the botnets would have been infected home computers like Windows machines. Nowadays, almost all of these attacks are done from mostly IoT botnets, because the attackers have easier time gaining access to poorly protected Linux-based IoT devices and build massively large attack networks from those. And it's surprising devices. For example, we see, home routers and printers, but also things like security cameras being used in these attacks. And it makes perfect sense when you think about it. These home security cameras are actually surprisingly powerful Linux servers. They have to have enough processing power to encode full HD or 4K video in real time, and they have to have enough bandwidth to stream full HD or 4K video in real time. And when you have thousands of these hacked, that's a pretty powerful network which can generate tons of traffic, and that's why they're being used in these attacks.
Yeah, and I really love that idea, and I fully comply with what you're saying with if it's smart, it's vulnerable.
Oh, you're referring this?
Yeah.
So that's the title of the book I released in August.
Very good. So IoT devices, of course, will be an issue. And like you say, they are powerful computers, and it has been for many, many years. And I mean, many of them are already outdated. It's more than 10 years ago since I modded my DVD player, which has had a Linux distribution and network to run Spotify, which it wasn't made for. Mm-hmm. And of course, the criminals could use that same operating system to do whatever.
One of the challenges is that these devices have surprisingly long life cycles. My favorite example is a car. Like a car probably has the longest life cycle for any consumer goods that we buy. Right now, I'm driving a 21-year-old Toyota. It works like a charm. Now, imagine as now cars are becoming data centers. Brand new Volvos are data centers on 4 wheels. How will we maintain and patch the systems on the sensors and CPUs and processing units of these cars for decades? How will we deploy patches for them in 20 or 30 years from now? Great question. I don't think we have an answer for that.
No, and that was one of my follow-up questions. How do we secure these devices? Like all the big companies like Samsung rolls out new TVs, and they're probably interested in those in maybe 1 or 2 years, and the new models take over.
Yep.
And they don't care about the old ones. So what do we do about them?
Well, this is a failure for the market to really process this problem. The thing is, when consumers buy consumer goods, price is the most important selling point. When you're buying a new washing machine, you're asking for the price. You might be asking how many kilos it can wash in one go, or what's the color. But the one thing you don't ask about is how secure is it? Like, what kind of firewall does my washing machine have? What kind of intrusion prevention technologies does it have? And it is going to be online. All of these will be going online. And that means that the vendors who invest in better security for their washing machines will have features that nobody's asking for, but it will make them more expensive. And if it's more expensive than the competition, it's going to lose in the market. And this is a failure for the market to function correctly. And when we have failures like this, the way our societies typically react is with regulation.
Yeah.
And regulation is a bit problematic. I'm not a big fan of regulation, but we do already regulate the fire safety and the electrical safety of the washing machines, but we regulate nothing about cyber safety of that washing machine, which means when you buy a new washing machine, you can be pretty sure that it's not going to catch fire, it's not going to give you an electric shock, but it will leak your Wi-Fi password.
Yeah, probably. And it's not only consumers, it's businesses as well.
Absolutely, of course, because everything's going online.
Yeah, we have a coffee machine upstairs in our office, which the users can go to an app and make their own recipe
Right.
For the coffee machine.
Smart coffee machine. If
Yeah.
it's smart, it's vulnerable.
You're probably right.
I think I am.
So,
It's a very pessimistic law, but it's also true. When we add connectivity and functionality, things become hackable because we can't build unhackable things because we are humans. When humans build things, we make mistakes. And when coders make mistakes, they become bugs. And when we have bugs in interconnected systems, they become vulnerabilities. We compare our watches. You have an Apple Watch, I have an Omega, which is 20 years old. This is unhackable because there's no code, there's no CPU, there's no connectivity. Apple Watch is very, very secure. They've invested, I don't know, $100 million to make it secure. Is it completely unhackable? No. It's built by humans. There are ways in. There's connectivity and there's code. It can be hacked. This can't.
that's correct. So, there's no way out of this. Is that what you say?
There is a way, but you're not going to like it.
Okay.
Now, I write about this in my book as well. It's of course has to do with far future and how we are going to be building these things in the future. Creative works are more and more being taken over by machine learning systems. This is already happening in art. It will be happening with music. It will be happening with poems. It will be happening with code, because coding is art. Eventually, most code will be written by machines. Code will be writing code. And when you have really advanced machine learning systems writing the code we run, they won't make mistakes. There will be no bugs, which means there will be no vulnerabilities. That's the solution, but you're not going to like it because it means all coders are unemployed.
Yeah. So it's either Matrix or the Stone Age.
Well, you said it. I didn't say it, but roughly that. And of course, this is going to take a while.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I think I'll be retired before this happens. But that is the long-term solution, and it's painful. Like any big revolution is painful. When we invented not artificial intelligence, but artificial power 300 years ago, like steam engine and electrical engine, that was really painful revolution as well. A lot of people got unemployed because of this major new innovation. Exactly the same thing is going to happen right now, and it is painful, but it's going to happen.
Very good.
Oh, very bad.
Or very bad. Do you have any advice for our customers? Top 3 security measures for a medium-sized Norwegian company?
Well, I think it all is around visibility. So knowing what you have, having real inventory control of where our data is, what kind of systems do we use, how many phones do we have, where are they, what cloud systems do we use, where are they being hosted, knowing where you have and what's the most valuable thing you have. The sad reality is that for most leadership teams or members of the boards, the first time they put a money figure on the data the company holds is when they get hit by ransomware. Because then they have to put a money figure on it. And that's not good enough. We have to know what we have. We have to know what's the most valuable things we have in this organization and where is it. So inventory. Then it gets into visibility. What does normal look like in our day of life? If we're trying to prevent attacks, the old idea of trying to keep everybody out doesn't work anymore, because there is no outside and inside anymore as we use more and more of these cloud-based systems. So it's useless to try to think that we'll just keep everybody out all the time. You should assume that the attackers will get in, they will gain access to your data. And then the question becomes, how quickly can you detect an anomaly? How quickly can you detect a breach so you can react to the breach? Assume that you will be breached, and then figure out how you will be able to tell that there's a breach so you can react to it before bad things happen. And this is painful as well. We don't like to think that we will be failing. We're building all these defenses and we should be assuming that all of that will fail and they will get in anyway. And that's exactly what we should be thinking. So, logging, visibility, inventory.
Very good. Thank you. And any final words for our Norwegian viewers?
Well,
read your book.
Well, that's a great idea. You can actually listen to it nowadays as well. It's available as audiobook. But that's not the tip, really. I think the thing I always want to emphasize is that even though I've spent all my life looking at the downsides of the internet, I still love the internet. I think it's the best thing that has happened during our time. The upsides are much bigger than the downsides, and we definitely should not be shying away from all the benefits that the internet can give to us. The companies that succeed today are the ones which are best in embracing digital technology. Every company is a software company. The benefits that this revolution brings us are much bigger than the downsides.
Totally agree. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, guys.